Welcome back. The political unrest in Egypt is causing international investors to flee from emerging markets as risk aversion picks up. This puts pressure also on other markets in the MENA region. But with stock prices falling, now could be a good opportunity to invest. To find out whether that is the case and which sectors and countries in the MENA region are the most promising, I earlier spoke to Joe Kawkabani, Managing Director of Algebra Capital. Joe, with the political unrest in Egypt at the moment, we had emerging market stocks fall quite a bit. The markets have been tumbling. That is also affecting the MENA region markets. Is now maybe a good time to buy as prices are low?
Well, obviously, these kind of events trigger panic across investors, and for them, they have a bird's eye view on MENA, and they decide to sell markets that could be related or not related, in fact, to what's happening in Egypt. And what you said is very true. We've seen a sell-off across. We've seen a sell-off impact markets like Saudi Arabia, impacting markets like Qatar or the UAE. And our belief here at Algebra Capital is that the conditions or the problems we have in Egypt will not spread out across the region. And specifically here in the Gulf, we believe that we have different political systems, different economic systems, and that will help the problem not to spread. And in that case, if you look at the sell-off, this obviously would have created many opportunities for investors to actually take advantage of.
In recent weeks, we had food prices rallying for wheat, for rice, for corn. We also had commodity prices such as oil rising. That puts pressure on inflation. How is that affecting the MENA region?
That's very true, and that's dangerous. And it's not only impacting the MENA region, it's a global impact. We've had all sorts of food commodities go up, rice, wheat, and the ones that you've mentioned. We have energy at the same time going up, and we're seeing everywhere headline inflation and core inflation increasing. And in fact, here in the MENA region, in places like Qatar, we've moved from a deflationary environment to an inflationary environment. UAE, we're seeing signs of higher inflation. Saudi Arabia, we're seeing higher readings. And Egypt, we've seen inflation hit double digit. Now, this will impact more, in our opinion, markets that are poorer in nature, where GDP per capita is lower, where the government doesn't have the resources to deal with it, and much less richer markets where governments will have more resources to deal with it. And if we take, by example, what Kuwait did, where they've distributed literally cash on the population to help them deal with these issues, and they've passed a bill to subsidize food further to deal with the issues, and we can think that the Gulf, all in its entirety, can possibly deal with these issues in the same way. And the inflation will not really impact growth or have any social ramifications. But in other countries like Egypt, like Jordan, like Morocco, for example, they don't have the same means, and which means that it's going to come at a cost. And the government is going to tread a very fine line to take decisions to absorb it and control it.
I want to talk to you about the UAE markets. Now, we had many debt-laden companies switching debt into equity, by that diluting profits for existing shareholders. It's been nagging on confidence these days. When do you think will confidence here in the region pick up again?
I mean, first, I would like to say that it's not the only issue impacting confidence. There are other issues that I'll talk about later, but to address specifically the issue of dilution, yes, we've had certain examples of companies that did have to restructure their debt and eventually had to issue convertible bonds or dilute equity shareholders in one way or another. And that's obviously is not good. No, investors should obviously distinguish between good companies and bad companies, distinguish between companies with healthy balance sheets and companies with not so healthy balance sheet that need the restructuring. And those companies that don't have the healthy balance sheets and that did restructure and dilute equity holders are not the majority of the market. So we will always have problems like this, but our job as money managers is to distinguish between these companies and make the right choices. Now, on a second level, on the level of the confidence, there are other parameters for the confidence, and that's true. In 2009, specifically, after Lehman Brothers, we've seen lack of confidence, specifically from the international investment community and even from the investors here in the UAE and the region to invest in the region. And they got all spooked by the issues in Dubai. They didn't know how things are going to develop. Oil was pricing. People took a step back. But confidence was gradually coming back. And last year, 2010, we started seeing inflows into our markets by both local domestic investors and international investors. And we do think that this trend will accelerate as we go forward and show the growth that the region has.
Looking at the GCC region, which sectors and also which asset classes do you think hold the highest opportunities for investors?
In terms of asset classes, I'm not going to be very specific. You can see opportunities in all asset classes.
Which
you can
would
look
be
at the bond markets,
bonds,
and you can see high-yielding bonds and different government bonds that would be attractive. Even in the real estate, some people, it's not really our specialty, but we do hear that there are some distressed, interesting opportunities that one could take advantage of. My specialty is equities, and we see plenty of opportunities in the equity markets all across the region. In terms of sectors, we would focus more on any sector that is related to the infrastructure side, because this is what's really driving growth. It's the government, it's all these projects. Contractors, building materials, anything as well that the government would spend on, such as utilities, let's say power generation, water generation, etc. We look as well at the consumer, because the consumer here in the region is not as leveraged as the West, and we have good demographic composition, and that's going to as well grow. However, we'd be very careful right now with the inflation happening. And finally, we'd look at financials. After being hit very badly in the last couple of years, we think valuations are very supportive, and we think that in most cases we've seen the worst. So now I think it would be a good time to start looking at banks in different markets.
Looking at the MENA region now again, which countries do you think are the most promising this year from an equity trader's point of view?
From an equities perspective, we like right now, we like two markets a lot. We like Qatar, and that's probably
because of the World
Cup is
football.
one thing, but Qatar has a different story as well. There's the LNG story. They've increased their capacity. We're going to see very strong real GDP growth, one of the highest in the world. We're going to see very high nominal GDP growth. It's a market where valuations are very attractive, and it's a very interesting market. Now, add to that the impact that $50 billion being spent on the World Cup over the next seven years as they've planned. That's going to make these, if you want, projects more realistic. Another market that we like a lot is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia probably represents half the economy of the MENA. There's a very strong commitment from the government to keep on spending, to diversify away from oil, to spend on healthcare, on education, and that's creating a lot of opportunities in the market. We as well believe that valuations are very supportive. They have different sectors that are even competitive globally, such as the petrochemical industry. So it's a very deep, rich market where the government is spending. We're going to see very good growth, and we believe valuations are attractive.
Thank you very much for your insights. Great.
Thank you.
Well, that's it from the business desk. You can contact us, though, at news@city7tv.com. Up next, Laura Bockwell is back with the news.